Is working in community a dead-end career? This is one of those questions that's really important to everyone that works in the space. And I think because of that, there's a huge amount of bias that creeps into the answer. I think what we want to be true and what might actually be true can be many, many different things. And so what I want to explore instead is, what does the data say? What does the data say about whether this is a dead-end career or not? Because I think we can all think of people that worked in community and then climbed to a really high level. But then we run into the issue of survivorship bias, where for every one of those folks that did get to a high level, what about everyone that didn't? How many people didn't make it? How many people are being stuck in the same job year after year after year? How many people haven't made any progress whatsoever? So I'll give away the answers right now, and then we'll explain a little bit about how we got there. So is community a dead-end career? For many people, somewhat. For some people, absolutely not. And for a few, the answer doesn't really matter at all. But let's go into the data and see exactly what the data says here. So, is community a dead-end career? So we looked at some data points for this because I think the data points are very important to explore. And there's a reason why this question is coming up now. I spent the last maybe 25 minutes or so looking up all the CMX reports over the last 4 or 5 years. And generally what we can see is the community industry is contracting. I personally think we've been in a community recession for a couple of years now, and it only seems to be getting worse, especially for the B2B enterprise communities we typically work with. We know that fewer people that answer these surveys are working full-time than before. And I also think a lot of the community advice is out of date. A lot of the career advice that we used to share from 2018 to 2022 is nowhere near as relevant today as what it was back then. It was written before AI, it was written before the big contraction, it's written before all the big layoffs in the tech space. But there's a couple of important trends, especially when you look at the CMX data, that are really worth paying attention to. As I mentioned, number of full-time community roles is down. 2, confidence in investment is significantly down, especially from that peak glorious post-pandemic phase. There's far less investment into the space. 3, interest from other departments has dropped dramatically in recent years. I really wish they still shared this data at the moment, but unfortunately they don't. But none of these metrics point to anything that's positive in our space. That's one argument why community itself might be a dead-end career. But let's go deep into the data. So we looked at a couple of things here. One, I mentioned already, the CMX industry reports. I know their 2026 one is due soon, and I'll take a look at that. Another thing we did was a cohort study. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then we looked at the broader labor market as well. And this is generally what's going on at the moment. So what we know about community is the community pyramid is unusually flat at the top. If you look at job titles, there's some exec C-level folks, but these are very small organizations. What we generally found is that there's 21 managers for every one VP. Now we have to caveat this by saying manager means different things in community from elsewhere, but that's still a very big number. There aren't that many roles to progress into at the moment. 2, where did community pros end up? The problem with all this survey data is that it gives you a snapshot of time. And there's always a danger that what you're measuring isn't trends over time, but just variations in the sampling size and composition. So if the same people don't take the survey each year, which they probably don't, it'll be different people, different years, then you're going to get different answers. That doesn't mean it's a trend, it just means that variability in the sample composition. So we did something else. Back in 2015, we hosted an event called Feverby Sprint, 11 years ago. And we had all the attendee information, we had their job titles and what company they worked for. And of them, we selected a sample, I think 100, and then we tracked what happened to them. 11 years on from these 86 folks that were in community 11 years ago, what happened to them? And this data I think is absolutely fascinating. So 8% climbed in community to a senior director or VP role. That's fantastic for them. 1% senior at community as a product company. We can probably guess who that is. 24%. This is the one that absolutely shocked me. 24% are still in that role today. Now, I'll caveat this. This is based upon LinkedIn. If they don't update their LinkedIn in all that time, then they will still be included in this. But as best we can tell, they're still in that same job, that same role all this time later. 41% moved laterally out of community into a different role. 20% went independent or founded their own thing, which is actually a really high number to think about. And 6% left the field entirely. Different space, different sector, no longer working community anymore. Now, I'd love to do a bigger sample size than this. I think we could include all the people that attended all our events all those years ago, but this takes so much time and energy to do. But maybe at some point we will. But even the data is really interesting that people do tend to stay in the same role for a long time. But then we looked at something else, which is when people do leave community compared with staying in it, what does their career look like? And this to me is probably the most definitive metric we have to answer the question right now, is that if you stay in community, there's a 28% chance that you will reach that director or VP level. However, if you move out of it to another role, there's a 60% chance that you will. So I guess you could say some people are just more ambitious than others. And if you just like doing the work, then staying in that same role might be great. And that's absolutely fine. No shame in that whatsoever. But if you want to be ambitious, then you probably have to move out of community. Or you could also argue that ambitious people do tend to switch roles and they're more likely to climb. But still, the data is quite fascinating to look at. What we've generally found is that community seems to be this 3 to 7 year window, at least doing that core work, that core community work. And either you tend to get stuck in it, or if you want to progress beyond it, you probably need to leave community after that time. Only 8% of people climb within community itself. Only 8%. There just aren't that many roles to climb into. Despite all the articles we can write about VP of community, there really aren't that many roles to climb into. And if you leave, you have a twice as much chance of reaching that director level, that VP level. Like, it really does help to work in community for a short amount of time and then move on to the next thing. So we know that the ratios are really high. So the industry is very bottom heavy. We know that 42% of community pros are managers, probably community managers, and only 2% are VPs. So what I think all this means, there's a couple of paths forward at the moment. One, when community is not a dead-end career, it can help if you work for a big organization and you manage a team by year 4. Ultimately, if you want to climb, if you want to have a career where you're reaching that VP level, you need to have that direct profit line responsibility, and you need to be managing a team. You're simply not going to get there without that. So you need to make sure you're positioning yourself to work within a team if one day you want to manage a team. If you're doing this by yourself or in a team of 2, there's probably limited prospects to advance there. 2 is where community is a business. Some of the people who are doing very well were working for organizations now where they're either working for the vendor, they are either working at a company where community itself is the business. Stack Overflow, Reddit, organizations that are like that. 3, consultancy, agency, or fractional CCOs. So Fever obviously is an example. There's plenty of other consultants in the space. I would say that consulting, and I say this having watched, I don't know, maybe 100 or so people in this space try to transition into consulting over the last 15 years. It's not easy. Very few people have been able to make it. And part of that is that there aren't that many clients to go around. And it's very hard if you're starting today to have an advantage over the people like me and others who've been doing it for a long time. It's not impossible, but you need some way of highlighting why you are the best option and also how you're going to attract clients. Do you have unique relationships or unique reputation that no one else does? Most people, I think, believe they can do the work, which that's another topic entirely, but attracting clients is going to be very difficult. So if you can make it work, that's great. But I would say the overwhelming majority of people I know have tried really haven't been that successful. So some takeaways here about what to do with all of this and bring it all together. 1, if you're working in community, especially in the weeds doing the work, treat it as a 3 to 7 year career window. You're probably not going to be in this for 20 years unless you want to be. If you just enjoy doing that work, I know a lot of people that are like, that's fantastic. Please keep doing that. 2, if you want to grow as soon as possible, move to an org with a real community team. You really have to be getting yourself in a place where you can start progressing up the ladder. And for that, you need to be in a community team. You need to be in a place that invests in community, good platforms, those kind of things. It also helps to pick a community type that maps to a revenue function more directly. Support is okay, but I did notice, and I didn't get all the data because it's hard to define it the right way, is that if you work more in marketing or product or advocacy or maybe the customer experience, you do tend to progress a little higher than if you're just doing a pure support online community. But I wouldn't put too much weight behind that, but it is an instinct I have. 4, we talk a lot about this elsewhere, own a metric that the business really cares about. 5, if you're 5 years in and nothing has changed, the data is telling you something. If you haven't progressed, you're probably in that situation that many people are in at the moment, where there just is nowhere else to go. And so if you want to grow, you probably have to make a lateral move to go up the career ladder. And as I said before, exceptions exist. There's large organizations with a community team, there's community as a product, there's independence. There's lots of opportunities for you. But if you're just going to stay in that role and just hope to be doing community work and to progress in that way, you're probably going to be disappointed over the long term. So, is community a dead-end career? It can be. It definitely can be. But if you want to progress, you have to be aligning yourself to a channel where you can progress, which means working within a larger team, or you need to think about making a lateral move out of community, where hopefully you can take those connections and experience and expertise that you learn from working in community to the next level. Good luck.